Never a Bother, a Marvel fanfiction written on AO3 by Potato Moon Jan. The link for this fanfiction will be in the description box below, so I encourage you all to go check it out. Peter doesn't have enough time to let out a scream as the wind gets knocked out of him. The crushing weight of the building is now his to bear. He attempts to breathe in air, but the dust and debris makes it almost impossible to get a good breath, especially with the tons of concrete upon his back. Peter tries to look up and see an opening in the rubble, but it's dark and he can barely see. Then he realizes he's trapped. Oh God, he's trapped. Hello? Help! Somebody help, please! He tries to scream for help. The young hero shouts at the top of his lungs, feeling tears spring into his eyes as he only hears the echoes of his own voice. Peter allows himself to panic now, his heart pounding in his ears as he sobs into the dusty air. Please, somebody, anybody! He thinks it's a trick in his mind, but he swears he can hear someone shout back. Hope hesitantly swells in his chest. Hello? I'm stuck! Down here, I'm stuck! The boy screams, trying to move his body to at least get some of the weight off. The building doesn't even budge. Peter! He hears his name get shouted and he sobs even harder. The boy doesn't have a clue who it could be, but he yearns for their help, for them to save him. Peter, I'm okay. You have to wake up, bud. That strikes a feeling of confusion. The voice is closer now, but he senses no one nearby. Hello? Is someone up there? He asks into the air. Kid, wake up. Weight on his shoulders shakes as he wildly looks around, crumbling down and dust settling on his wet cheeks. The voice is so close. Peter thinks he can feel something grab onto his arm, but when he looks, there's nothing there. Kid. Peter jolts awake, gasping for air and sitting up quickly. The grip on his arm quickly disappears, but he reaches out to grab it back, finding the hand in the darkness. Kid, Pete, you with me? Peter swallows and blinks the tears out of his eyes, looking up to see a very concerned Mr. Stark in front of him. The grip on his hand gently tightens. I think so, yeah. He breathes, sitting up further and trying to detangle himself from the sheets. But he doesn't get far and struggles in his hazy mind. He thinks he should feel embarrassed, but doesn't when Mr. Stark helps him out of his blankets, seeing him shiver now in the missing warmth. Sorry, did I wake you? Peter looks up at his mentor cautiously, but relaxes, once seeing the warmth in Mr. Stark's eyes. He lets out a small breath when the man shakes his head. Nah, I was up anyway. Fry told me you were having a nightmare, though. Are you alright? Peter wants to nod his head, just so he can let the man sleep. But he knows Mr. Stark is concerned, and would probably still be awake, knowing he isn't able to help. Plus, the young hero would hate to admit it out loud, but he could use the man's comfort. He shakes his head. I'm still a little bit shaken up, he says, looking down at his comforter, distantly aware of his mentor gently holding his hand, rubbing it with his thumb as comfort. The man nods, understanding due to his own share of nightmares. He was no stranger to them. Do you want to talk about it? Peter bites his lip. He had told Mr. Stark about the warehouse before, but he knew the man still felt guilty for what happened since he took the suit away. Peter didn't want to add on to the man's problems. They had gotten so much closer due to this, since the other hero didn't keep Peter at arm's length anymore. It was the warehouse. I know it was a long time ago, but he picks at a stray string on his pajamas, hearing Mr. Stark sigh softly at the admission. Peter refuses to look up, in fear of the man's shame or disappointment. He feels Tony gently tip his chin up with his finger to look him in the eyes. He does see shame swim in those eyes, but it's surrounded by that familiar warmth and concern. Pete, even if you're a superhero, that doesn't mean you'll be immune to injury, especially when it's up there. The older man gently taps his temple. Right, but what if it affects how I am a Spider-Man? Then you'll get help for it. I'll be there for you, and even if May doesn't get it, I'm sure she'd move hell and back for you to make sure you're in working order. The man gives a lazy smirk. Peter nods at that, feeling comforted by the fact that he would have two adults he trusts the most to support him. Do you think you'll be able to go back to sleep? He feels hesitant, but he sees feeling better than when he woke up. I think so. Peter looks up again at Tony as he gives him a gentle pat on his hand, pulling away now. He shifts forward like he's going to try and grab the man's hand again. But do you think you could stay just for tonight? He asks carefully. He sees Mr. Stark give it thought and then nod. Peter scoots over onto his bed to give the man room and notices that Tony is slightly surprised by this. But he climbs in and gets comfy anyway. He gently pulls the boy onto his shoulder, making sure he held him tightly. Peter wraps his arm around the man, sticking to him like an octopus. The boy begins to feel safer by the second, as Tony cards a hand through his curls, gently scratching his scalp and playing with his hair. The boy is a millisecond from falling back asleep when he feels a gentle kiss on his forehead, and he hears a quiet, "Good night, Pete," as he finally drifts off, safe in his father figure's arms, knowing he will be always safe.